Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second podcast in our series, Your Voice, Our Morrisville. And today we are discussing one of Morrisville's treasures, and that is our library. Our guests today are people who can talk about two different aspects of the library, both from a historical perspective as well as what the library is facing right now. So first, I want to introduce our guest, Bruce Stevens. He is a local Morrisville historian. And he is joined by Peggy Walsh, who is a candidate for council in the 3rd Ward, and she is also a longtime resident of Morrisville. So Bruce, let me start off with you. I know that you have written a history of the beginning of the Morrisville Library and how it all began. Can you tell some people, including myself, I'm a lifelong resident of Morrisville, but even I don't know the history of the library. Can you just give us a quick history of how it started?
Well, back in 1904, 9 residents formed the first board of directors and opened the first library in the front room of a resident's home. After 2 years, the library was moved to a borough council building.
Wow, so our library began over 120 years ago?
Yes.
That's incredible. So the library, it started off in someone's home and then it went to the borough council building. Can you tell us a little bit more about the library and how it moved to the building that it's in now?
Well, from the years 1912 to 1919, the library was active and inactive due to financial issues. During that time, the residents asked the Morrisville Borough Council to maintain the library and thus be eligible for Pennsylvania state aid. The request failed 3 times, and in 1919, the records show resident Edward Moon wrote, "This is the death of the 3rd attempt for a library in Morrisville."
Oh, wow. So how did the library get past being rejected 3 times with all of these kind of stops and starts?
In 1924, the library became active again when 2 rooms were set aside in the Morrisville Community House. Many of the books were donated from the Periodical Society of Philadelphia. Through the efforts of Reverend Holden, the rector of the Episcopal Church of the Incarnation, and Thomas Stockham Jr., a civic leader and parish member. Again, the library was off to a good start, and cards were issued for 169 persons at a fee of $2 each. This fee, along with fines and occasional money raising, provided the financial support to maintain the library.
So it sounds like the people of the town really wanted a thriving library at that time, even though sounds like it was dormant for several years.
Yes, in 1948, the Morrisville Women's Club assumed responsibility for finance and operating the library. For years, that club solicited funds door to door, and the Morrisville Council gave appropriations. Finally, in 1958, Morrisville residents passed a referendum to support the library by municipal taxes.
So the library has been supported by Morrisville through taxes and whatnot since 1958.
Yes. In 1962, the library applied for state aid, but in order to qualify, they needed to find larger quarters. And that space was the basement of Summerseat, which is a National Historic Building here, with a rental of $1 per year. When the Episcopal Church moved to a new location, their former building at 300 North Pennsylvania Avenue was purchased by the borough, and at last the library was moved to its permanent location.
Wow, so the building that the library is in right now, that used to be an Episcopal church?
Yes.
Wow, okay. So when we talk about a historic library, we're really not exaggerating, since the idea started over 100 years ago in 1904. And then, it's amazing that it moved around so much and then finally got a permanent home and had multiple locations. That's really fascinating history. Thank you for sharing that, Bruce.
I just want to add, if I may, that Bruce is currently working to get the library certified as a historic building on the
Yes.
historic registry. But it's a matter of finding, Bruce, you tell them, it's a matter of finding.
Finding the drawings by the original architect, which supposedly is Thomas Stockham.
Oh, wow.
And it,
So, Mr. Stockham III and I have been going through his records to find these drawings, and we're still looking.
Well, so do you know when that building was? So it was originally a church, as we just said. Do you know when that building was built?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know when it was built.
No? Okay.
No, don't. I have to,
Okay.
off the
That's
top of my head.
interesting. Okay. And so going over to you, Peggy, can you tell us a little bit about why you're so committed to preserving the library?
Well, I sort of have to offer a disclaimer because I am a retired English teacher. A lot of my best friends are librarians, and they're really the smartest people I know. But I'm also a mother and a grandmother, and I just understand how important a vital library is to families with children, and for residents who need a place to be able to take out books, use the computer, get videos, do all those kinds of things. And right now, we even using the library for our, to put in a plug, we have a book club that meets in Morrisville once a month at the library downstairs. So we're even using it for that as a community gathering place.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Now,
So,
adding to that, most of the members of the book club are longtime residents of Morrisville. So this is not a community that turns people over.
no, as someone who's,
I go,
yeah,
wow.
I've lived in Morrisville my whole life. Yep. So I hear that. I'm still here. So, so Peggy, what are your main concerns right now about the library?
Well, I would say that my concerns started really a few years ago when and it started with the children's summer programs, because I took my grandchildren to one of the summer programs in the library, and I was just blown away by, first of all, the number of children who were there. I mean, it was over 60 children.
Over 60?
Yes, because we have a lot of daycares in Morrisville, plus people who have young children at home. So
Right.
it was really, the room was filled in the basement, and then the quality of the programming was just amazing. I can't quite remember all the ones we saw, but I know we saw one on insects and saw one on different musical instruments. And the children were engaged and they were participating and they were so active. So after I started talking to the then children's librarian, and she told me that she had to cancel a few of the programs that she had scheduled because she had lost her funding from the borough for the children's library programs.
Wow. Okay.
But she had managed to scramble together enough funding to run at least 3. So I talked to a council member at the time, and they assured me that they hadn't cut the funding, but we investigated the budget. I talked to somebody on the library board, and they pointed out the zero in the funding for the summer library. So we lost that librarian, and then we hired a new children's librarian who has just done a remarkable job with the few hours that she has. They even had a wonderful write-up about what she did in the Morrisville Times about a family Lego night. So she has STEM activities on Saturday, and then she does, a little toddler storybook hour during the week. But I think she actually only has about under 10 hours a week to work with children's programming. That's the only budget. Oh, and I would also like to say that the children's programs only cost, it's $3,000. We're not talking tons of money for the summer
Right.
programs in the summer. It's like $3,000. So it's not a lot of money. So then we've also lost that children's librarian, because when our longtime librarian retired, our current children's librarian applied for the job of full-time librarian and also to remain the children's librarian. But she never got any response from anybody on Borough Council. So in the meantime, she found another job. So we're also going to lose her.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I just think it's a tragedy that kind of could have been avoided.
Right. Right. Okay.
Like you never want
And
to lose good people.
right. So, in talking about your concerns, other than this summer program that you just laid out, that's kind of struggling. I know that you told me offline that she was able to get some local sponsors like Burns Pharmacy was able to contribute. But other than the summer programs, what other concerns do you have, or what would you like to see for the library?
Well, in keeping in line with the children's programming, I would like to see more hours devoted to children's programming during the week. We have many young families moving
Yeah.
in Morrisville. Just in my block alone, I know in the last 3 or 4 years, we've had at least 5 young families move onto our block. And they've either moved in with young children or they've had children as soon as they have gotten here. And so a library is a place where young mothers, who are home can take their children for storybook hour, for activities, for playtime. I would invite anybody who hasn't visited the downstairs of the library to go in and see the setup. I mean, it is just an amazing space, so creatively done for children. There's a reading corner, there's a puppet theater, there are blocks, there are STEM activities, there are Legos, all kinds of things, for children to do. And I think some people feel that, well, that's not the job of a library to provide a space like that for children. But every library around us has these spaces for children that are staffed, and you can take your children there. And then in the meantime, they can check out books, they can do story reading with their parents or with their caregivers. And I just think that if we want to have young families come into our borough, we need to provide family-friendly activities. And some people will say, well, they can go and get in the car and go ride to Yardley or go ride to Levittown and use their libraries. But we're a walking district. So why don't we provide something that our young families, can walk to and take their children to and enrich them, enrich their lives. So that's my other concern. I would like to see. I think she doesn't even have 10 hours a week, the children's librarian. So I think we could definitely do more than that.
So you talked a lot about children's programs. Is that your only concern with the library right now, or are there other
No,
things?
I really was very concerned. We went to some of the candidates who are running for council, went to the last library board meeting. Bruce was there. And the council president came and she had invited a representative from the Bucks County Free Library to speak to the board about the possibility of forgoing state funding. Now, in any given year, depending on the state budget, which fluctuates, Morrisville receives about $37,000 a year from the state. Now that comes with requirements of leaving the library open 45 hours a week and spending 12% of that money on replenishing the collection, the library collection. So the representative said that Morrisville could forego this state funding. And we asked the question, somebody on the board asked the question, is there any way that we can get that funding back if we do without it for a year and we find out it doesn't work? And he says, there's nothing in place right now. I'm not sure if you can ever get it back, once you relinquish it.
Wow.
And then I think with the current state of the federal budget, and state budgets, really rely on federal funds, it seems to me that it would be short-sighted and foolish to forego that funding now when we don't even know how long it'll last or how much it will be.
Yeah.
And I just felt that it was a slippery slope that would lead to the ability to cut hours drastically, because we wouldn't have that requirement that the library has to be open 45 hours a week. So to me, that was really a red light, and I was just really, really concerned about it.
Yeah, and it sounds a little short-sighted to just basically leave money on the table because you don't want to be open the bare minimum amount of hours.
And,
So
and, and, and once you give up that funding, there's no requirement. So I just feel with the current track record of council and their commitment to our library, that I just have a very bad feeling if we were to do that. And then the other thing that she asked the representative to emphasize was the fact that the current library board are simply an advisory board. They don't have any decision-making powers. So I just felt that that was kind of a veiled message that they aren't even going to make this decision, that it will be the council who makes this decision about whether to forego state funding.
wow. So if you're a Morrisville resident or Bucks County resident, anybody listening to this podcast, what should someone do? Like, what actions should someone take to try to keep the library up, open them the minimum amount of hours, continuing with the children's program? Like, what would be like the next step someone should take?
Well, I know one of the things that just occurred was when there was word that we might not have the children's summer programs, because the current children's librarian is going to have, she set up the programs, but she is going to have to leave before they're all finished. So that means that current library workers and staff will, have to go down and help to supervise, these programs, even though they're
Right.
set up. So there was just a feeling that they were going to cancel these library summer programs that had already been paid for. So a petition circulated online to save the summer programs at the library. And I think the last count of signatures was 270 people that wanted this to occur. There's also a Friends of the Library program, because we recognize that the library does have to do some fundraising. So Bruce just participated in a book sale that was very successful, and they got a very large donation. Tell them how much.
Well, we got donations to the Friends of the Library.
Okay.
And it was one check for over $500.
So
wow.
And then so the Friends of the Library is trying to get activities together and events together to provide more citizen support for the library. But our feeling is just like the police, you should fund your library. It shouldn't have to be people going out hand in hand. We saw that happen in the early history that Bruce talked about, where people had to collect dues and fees and all those kinds of things, which is illegal if you take state aid. You can't do that anymore.
But our library is funded by real estate tax.
And our library,
it's earmarked for the library. It doesn't go into the general coffers.
Right. Okay. And so I will put links to Friends of the Library as well as the petition that Peggy mentioned in the description of this podcast episode. So you can just click on that, go over, check it out, sign the petition if you feel so inclined. So before we wrap up, was there anything else that you would like to say, Peggy or Bruce, about the library and how people can get involved?
Well, I know they're always looking for volunteers. I think there is a misunderstanding of the number of volunteers circulating in Morrisville. My understanding is that currently there are only 2 volunteers and they're juveniles, which is wonderful. But so we don't have this cadre of volunteers swarming into the library. Plus, being a librarian is a very specialized,
Yeah.
it takes specialized knowledge and experience and understanding. So while volunteers can certainly do a lot, they can't run the library.
Right. So, all right. Well, I would like to thank you both for all of this information and education about the library and where it was and where it's going. And invite everyone to check out Friends of the Library. Also, stay in touch with Your Voice, Our Morrisville, and listen to the next podcast, which will be coming up, where we're going to talk about some other issues facing Morrisville. So I thank you both, and stay tuned for more.